Okay, so Developer Direct 2024 also gave us another look at Hellblade 2 from Ninja Theory, being developed up there in Cambridge, not a million miles away from where I live.
Hmm.
And interesting one, this one, because
Mm.
it's still slightly enigmatic about what's actually happening in the game, right? We've seen combat, we've seen a cutscene, we've seen entering and exiting a cave.
True, we have seen that.
We've seen this now.
John, what more did we learn about the game from developer underscore direct?
I mean, I feel like this they finally, I guess they have showed more of the environment and the world
Yeah.
that you'll explore in this game compared to prior showings, because this is a strange one in that they've been showing this game since 2019, was it?
Yeah.
But I feel, and maybe this is not a bad thing, but it feels like we don't really know much about it because, the gameplay reveal was, as Richard pointed out, you walk into a cave, watch a cutscene, and then you leave the cave. And you're like, okay. But, yeah, this video actually showed some proper combat, and I was happy to hear that they specifically noted that the combat system has been changed. It's new, revised. Which is cool because combat played well in the original, but it was extremely straightforward. And by the end, it felt as if you were doing exactly the same thing throughout the entire game. And I'm hoping that there's a little bit more nuance to the actual play. And say what you will about their DMC game, which has many of its own issues, the actual core mechanics in that, I think, were generally pretty darn good. They did a nice job there, so I would like to see them leverage a little bit more of that level of combat
Yeah.
in this game. And we'll see what happens. It's difficult to say. Uh, I it's interesting though hearing the original is such a weird experience, and it's one of those games. It's one of the few games that really pushed binaural audio as a means of conveying information to the player. I mean, I assume you guys have tried that with headphones, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, they're doubling
Good.
down on it with this one.
I think that's really cool. Like I am a proponent of home theater setups and such, but this is definitely one series that I think really celebrates a different form of audio thanks to headphones, and anybody can enjoy it. And binaural audio, for those not familiar, it's typically so when recorded with a binaural microphone, you would physically have a dummy head with physicalized ear canals, and the mics are placed in that, and it's to simulate the way sound bounces around inside your ear. And when the mic records that and you play it back through headphones, it can actually recreate that effect in just with the sound file. No special hardware for the user or anything. It's literally just headphones.
Yeah.
And this is how they were able to accomplish that sort of the voices in the head stuff.
Mhm.
Although I'm curious, I'm happy that they're able to sort of double down on that, because it does look like a rather tortured game, and it's the kind that's not going to appeal to everyone. So it's, but like, which I think is cool that Microsoft's allowing a big game on their console that they've been pitching for years to explore this space. I was talking to a friend about this, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not interested in it." I was like, "Wait, really? Why?" And they're like, "Well, the original it's just a game you play that wants to make you feel like garbage." It's like, what? Like what? It's like basically the whole point is simulating a person who's going through a very difficult time, and
Right.
it puts you in this headspace of feeling terrible. And it's like, when you think about it that way, that's what they're doing, and they were pretty darn effective at that. But that's not like a mass market thing. So, respect for being able to produce something like this as a first party release. I think
Right.
that is cool, even if it's not for everyone. But so beyond all that though, and we'll talk more about this is an Unreal Engine 5 game, as we know. And I do think what they've shown visually is excellent, and probably one of the best things we've seen from any first party studio yet. Just in terms of character rendering and some of the effects and lighting. I mean, it looks very, very nice. There's that scene where one of the enemies sort of blows fire towards Senua. I love the way that looks. It looks more filmic, right? It's a
Yeah.
very soft game. They're using a lot of VFX. It kind of reminds me of an even more realistic take on A Plague Tale Requiem.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
With that extremely dense, geometric terrain and lots of fine granular detail everywhere and like very realistic lighting. Although I think the animation of the characters here is probably beyond what we saw in Plague Tale. So all of that stuff, I think this will be a very cool experience, which is something I am looking for. And it is interesting that they confirmed it to be a similar length to the original, which at first I was like, wait, they've spent like 6 years making this, but at the same time, I tend to prefer smaller games as well. So, and I don't think a 40 to 40 hour game of having voices in your head would be all that palatable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe this is the right choice.
You can
exactly. So I'm still very excited for it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I was expecting maybe a larger game just by virtue of the title. You know, Senua's Saga. Right. It kind of suggested something a bit more expansive and larger. I don't really. Here's the thing, right? I still don't really know what to expect from this game. I mean, if we take a look at what we saw gameplay-wise in this particular developer _ direct, it was basically, you know, some walking forwards, some environment shots, and some combat. Yep. We still don't really have, you know, how does it play? What happens in a general level? You know, I'm suspecting it's going to be much the same as the first one based on what we've seen so far, but with everything amped up from a visual and audio perspective. And that's fine, I guess. Just not quite what I was expecting. But at least things are becoming clearer now, and the release date isn't so far away, May 21st.
Right. I called dibs on it.
Okay.
Please,
covering.
On a technical level, there's two things that I thought were interesting. One is the aspect ratio. They keep showing the game in what looks to be 21:9. At this point,
the Order.
I think it's going to be an Order 1886 situation where they're using black bars to get more power out of that Xbox Series X there. And that's how they're able to push up the visuals. You know, we saw it also technically with the Matrix
Also,
demo.
Death Stranding, the PS5 version of that had a wide, ultra wide mode that expanded the FOV, but it was also like native 4K
pixel,
in terms of pixel rendering, right?
Right, exactly. So I think that's what we're going to be getting here on Xbox now, based upon the fact that they keep showing it this way. If they didn't, like, it'd be so weird if the Xbox version came out and was suddenly 16:9. But I also did see some TSR breakup. Specifically in the shot where John talked about the fire. That's so, like, TSR has an issue where with particles that are transparent, they do like a ghosty kind of image on them. So we saw a version of the game that was running TSR UE5. That, I mean, I don't want to say this is the console version. This was also only 30 FPS footage. I think we saw the entire time.
Yeah.
There were some moments in the Avowed trailer that were 30, but I think they were slowed down. You know, so I think this could be a good target of what we see on the series consoles there visually.
Alex, what do you think about this, though? This is a game when I look at this running at 30 frames per second with the quality of the motion blur and the post-process heavy image, where I actually think it looks pretty good at 30.
I think it looks fine.
The slow nature of it, I feel like it's an acceptable choice in this case. I
mean, for me, like, I would still play at a higher frame rate, but I think this is one of those games where the gameplay, like Rich said, we still have seen so little. Like, I don't think the gameplay is requiring anything that looks like a hardcore 60 FPS plus experience is required here.
Counter-Strike.
This is not your Counter-Strike.
Will's not going to play it.
Yeah, Will's not playing it. Counter-terrorists, like, how are they?
No Valorant. That's either. So
it's no Valorant. So poor Will. So I mean, we'll see here when it comes out. It's also going to be very interesting to see what the heck Series S is going to look like, all things considered.
Blurry.
Very blurry, I presume.
Maybe very ultra wide aspect ratio.
It's like
32:9.
32:9 in there. That's how they do it. That would be so funny.
Make a giant hood under it just for good measure.
It will be fine. I think generally is the.
Yeah, I do hope, though, in terms of accessibility options, it's a little bit hard, but the game, I could imagine, could turn people off due to how post-processing heavy it is. I think it would be nice to allow people to adjust motion blur strength and maybe adjust whether or not chromatic aberration and barreling, distortion barreling is occurring for that lens. Because the game's got all of that in there. The first game kind of did too. But it'd be nice to seeing those things, especially on the PC version, being toggleable.
It might have a performance mode. I mean, the first game had several modes. So we just don't know at this point. And, a performance mode would make the Series S port at 30 easier, I guess, in an Alan Wake style.
True.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, anything more about Hellblade 2? I guess we don't have to wait too long until we see it.
The final point to lay down, and this, thinking of those black bars and The Order 1886, my prediction is that this is the Xbox's The Order 1886.
Right.
Okay, cool.
And when I say that, that is not negative. I covered that game last year as sort of a retrospective, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, I thought it was really enjoyable. Yeah, it has a lot of limitations. It's a small game. I hope this doesn't have the same sort of cliffhanger aspect of The Order, because that was actually disappointing, because the story was getting good and then it just kind of ends, right? But everything else, The Order is a fairly linear, straightforward, experience-driven game. The core mechanics, the gunplay, are actually very solid and competent, but not genre-defining. And it tells its story well with memorable sort of sequences, characters, and it has the same sort of very filmic look with a lot of post-processing, really, really strong motion blur and animation work. And so basically that's kind of what I think we're seeing here, is a game of that style more than anything else. And when you think about it like that, I mean, I view that as a positive thing. Some people might say, well, that's not good, but I still think The Order was pretty all right. I like it.
Okay.